Hello, I'm CJ Dunford, and I'd like to read an extract from Burke's Last Witness, a novella I wrote about William Burke and Bill Hare, Scotland's most notorious and successful serial killers. The story is told from the point of view of their jailer, Hugh Rose. Wind whipped across the execution site. Hugh Rose's outlook from the platform across the Lawn Market was dizzying. From the 5-storey tenements on both sides, every window was open, and out of them hung 4 or more people apiece, yelling and waving their hats. The rumours that people were making money from the execution by selling viewing space was obviously true. At their back loomed the foreboding shadow of St Giles Cathedral, a silent witness to much of the city's bloodshed and death, but in his imagination dark and sternly disapproving. The crowd below ranged from the Lawn Market, up the castle, and down towards the port of Leith, packed densely together and all baying like wild beasts for death. In all his career, Rose had never witnessed such a spectacle of combined hate and unbridled joy. Despite the close proximity of those on the platform, he felt cold deep down inside him. This was the 19th century, the age of civilization, and yet people of his city massed together like some great monster sent by Satan himself to drag one soul down into hell. Snow began to fall across his vision, light and swift, but he could still make out the once handsome face of the man who stood in front of him. Dirty, unshaven, with his lank dark locks falling below his collar of his ill-fitting black suit, the prisoner still held himself with a vestige of his former confidence. His blue eyes met Rose directly, and the condemned man gave a partial wink. So quick, only Rose could see it. As he did, the laughter lines flashed across his face. Rose knew him well enough to know he revelled in the attention. A lesser man would have quailed before the hate of an entire city. But William Burke, accused of being the most notorious serial killer the country had ever caught, relished his last moments of life. A memory flashed into Rose's mind of the first time his men dealt roughly with him. Burke had urged them to take care of such an historical figure. Whatever he was, and whatever he'd done, Rose saw an extraordinary bravery in this man, and it made him doubt everything. Rose dropped his gaze to the wooden platform beneath him. The normally grubby planks scrubbed clean for this great occasion. Below, the crowd roared. He could make out words like murderer, death, and all the usual abuse thrown at the condemned. The difference was the volume. A sea of humanity surged below them. Doubtless the pickpockets and ruffians were having a fine time, but Rose envied his men down there in the thick of it all, struggling to keep the peace. Up here, wedged between the many clergymen Burke had invited to witness his death, it was warmer and ranker. He stood so close to the priest on his left, he could see the sweat breaking out on his fat face, and had all too good a view of the large black pockmarks that littered his skin. The priest, who was muttering, intoning liturgy, Rose guessed, had a small, smug smile lifting the corner of his mouth, obviously proud of his gaining his place in history. The hangman, an over-muscled, toothless individual, chosen for his ability to repel climbers onto the scaffold, and for his ability of apparent complete lack of compassion for his victims, pushed forward and lowered the rope around Burke's neck. The wind changed direction, and Rose felt his eyes begin to sting as the snow was driven directly at the little group. He brushed it from his eyelids to watch Burke's last moments, as he had promised. Burke's gaze met his, and then the condemned man spoke, but the wind whipped away his words. "I can't hear you," shouted Rose. Burke mouthed the words again. Suddenly, Rose knew it was vital he heard what Burke was trying to tell him. Only then would he understand. He pushed one priest aside, and then another. The more he pushed towards Burke, the further he seemed to be from him. He pushed yet another priest, and this one fell, plunging off the platform, his black tunic billowing in the wind like a giant crow. "Stop!" shouted Rose. "This is not right. The truth has not been told." He began to push with a frenzy that both sprang and bidden from within, and yet was somehow without. He felt his hand lash out and contact with each rough, dark cloak, the shock of impact followed by a cry as his victim fell. He was knocking men to their death. He knew it, but again and again his arm lashed out and struck another. The crowds below buffeted the pillars of the platform. A man grabbed the nearest pole and began to climb. Others followed. In a moment they would be overrun. The hangman jumped and was swallowed by the crowd below. Burke grinned, showing perfect teeth. He spoke again, and this time Rose heard him. "Time to wake up, matey." Thank you for listening. Burke's Last Witness is published by Fahrenheit Press and is available to purchase from Fahrenheit Press or Amazon websites.